And we just completed that. We are going to do a Category 2 demo. Please note Category 2 is on a different 471, so you cannot do them on the same. When we do the Category 2, this whole purpose of line items versus line item details makes a little bit more sense. I think it was really put in there for the purpose of Category 2, so it's a bit overwhelming in Category 1, but Category 2, it's going to make a little bit more sense for you. So let's come in here to the main landing page. Before I get started on my Category 2, I've noticed a lot of different people in the sessions having erroneous forms that they started but never finished. Usually you'd get in there and you think, oh, I don't see my 470, so I'm going to click another. In this particular case, I have this form down here that needs certified, but I am throwing it out. Like, this is not the one I'm going to go forward with. And so I'm going to show you guys how to go about getting rid of one of those forms. So here I'm on the certification page, and I go, nope, this isn't the one I want. I'm going to go back, and it says, are you sure? And yes, I am. And then I'm going to edit my form. And on this case, I'm going to click discard form. Now, if you have several 470s in the system, it also has, if you get a page that has something on it and it doesn't say discard form, back and discard form will take you there, and that will discard your forms. The reason that this is important is that if you have 470s sitting in the queue that have not been acted upon, the system will send you warnings next week when you get close to the 470 deadline and say, you have 470s that have not been submitted. And for a minute, that will cause you to panic because you did submit a 470, but you have extras here. I expect the same thing to happen for the 471s. So if you have extras that are sitting there, it will send you a warning that there is a 471 sitting that needs to be submitted. To verify that you have submitted those forms, you can go down to the bottom and choose 470 or 471. And then choose FY18, and you will see, here, let's go 470. I was going to say, I thought that I had one. Okay, so this is the 470 for FY18, and I can see that it is here and certified. When I click on it, if I want to get a copy of it or take a look at it, I can click on it, and I can see where it's at in the process, if it's been reviewed. This is a 470, so this one is all okay. I felt like they had a 470 on file, or 471 on file. Let me look here. Reports, landing page, Form 471, FY18. There we go. So this is the 471 from this year that she has filed. It is the Category 1 form. And when I click on it, it will tell me that it is already in review. So it has made it through. It's been certified. It is in review. This also will allow me to make some changes to my counts and things if I need to through a RAL, though we did that in her narrative for her 471. So that is where you will find your current information to verify that it is there. So again, reports and landing page takes us back to the first page. So it is a new 471 process. So in order to operate on that, I'm going to come over here to FCC Form 471 and start a new process. The first few pages look the same, so I'm going to call this one HD1 FY, again, 18-19 for the school year, so I know which year I'm talking about. Cat 2. The delete me, of course, is just for me. You may call it E-Rate is awesome, school district, go Bearcats, whatever you want to call it. Save and continue. Please do note if it is Cat 1 or Cat 2. Again, it's pulling me into the middle of the page, which is annoying. Scroll up to say, yes, you are the main contact person. And again, it is important to note your summer contact hours if you will not be in the district, even if it is a phone number for the main district office, somebody who knows how to get a hold of you. Save and continue at the bottom to lock that in. And this is the part where we will be choosing Category 2. So notice Category 2 does cover basic maintenance of internal connections as well as internal connections and managed internal broadband services. One of the things that bothers me about this is that I wish internal connections was at the top, like on the 470, because we've had several people report that last year they accidentally selected basic maintenance instead of internal connections. So what they thought they were getting was a firewall. And then when it came down time to pay for the firewall, USAC informed them, you didn't apply for a firewall. You applied for basic maintenance on a firewall. And the invoices did not jive. So please make sure that you are choosing the right one moving forward. This is Hudsonville School District. So again, this is sucking that information in from other parts of the portal. It is Hudsonville School District. This is the student counts, etc., for the district. So we've brought that stuff forward. Everything in it looks accurate. The student count is wrong, but we'll make a note of that. And then it gives you your discount percentage. If you see anything that is disturbing to you on these files, please reach out to Jamie Bader and see if she can validate your numbers or suggest any changes you might make. So it says, due to the phase down of voice services, you are no longer able to apply. I know that, and I'm applying for Category 2, but it's nice to have a little reminder that is a Category 1 service for our 90% districts. I'd rather them tell me than not tell me. Yes, I'm aware. Okay. So again, this page looks exactly the same as our 471 request. It's just the options underneath our 471 for Category 1 are going to be totally different than Category 2. This is the part where I am going to recommend something. You can take it or leave it. On your funding request for Category 2, you have to have a new funding request for each vendor because the vendor is going to attach to that bid and contract. If you have one vendor that is providing all of your stuff, you can do one FRN for network upgrades and put all of your items underneath it in separate lines. If you are having multiple vendors provide your stuff, you can do one for routers and switches and the other one for Wi-Fi equipment. So you do have to have a new FRN for each vendor. If you're created about your naming purposes, you don't have to do a new FRN for every service. You can group them into categories. You are going to have to name each service as either basic maintenance or internal connections. So if you're getting the devices from the vendor and you're calling that internal connections, that's fine. If you have a separate contract on your bid that is basic maintenance of that internal connection and service upon it, that will be in a separate category, separate FRN. However, you can attach the same contract to both. So if it's all on one bid that you have signed and initialed or you have an email committing to it, that is fine. You can attach the same contract multiple times. Questions? The FRN is attached to the SPIN number and contract. So we're going to start with add FRN. And then we're going to say, what do we call this? We call this network upgrades. It is not a continuation from a previous year because this is a brand new funding request for Cat 2. Cat 2, you get it, you spend it that year, and then you're done. You may not, just for the record, you may not say apply for Cat 2 all this year and spend it over the next 2 years. That is not how the program works. Even though you have a 5-year window to spend the money, you must apply on a 471 for each year. We have a few districts in the state who misunderstood that and thought as long as I have approval, I can do it anytime over the 5-year window. That's not the case. Regretfully, they did not find that out until after they tried to bill it outside of the year. And now we're having to file a bunch of paperwork for extensions that have been denied and now appealed. And it is a big process. So do it right to begin with and save yourself some heartache. So again, the service type here is either internal connections, basic maintenance, or managed internal broadband service. This last one is a paid-for service where a provider would come in and own all of your wireless equipment. And they would own it all, and they would just charge you an annual fee per student. It is an eligible service. Conveniently, it usually runs $25 to $30 per kid per year. But they will come in and take care of everything for you. That is eligible. You can pay for it. There are entire states who operate in that fashion. Across our state, the most common requests are internal connections, the stuff itself. We do have several requests for basic maintenance. So that is a fee that you can cover as well. So I'm going to click internal connections because what I want is my stuff. I thought I said continue. We'll see. Oh, I didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. Value is required. Thank you. It is not a continuation. I talked about it. I just didn't do it. All right, and so again, a bid is a contract. So I'm going to say contract here. Please, as a reminder, if at any time, if you upload a bid that does not have signatures and dates, you will be expected to produce that in PIA review. Never ever say, I'm sorry, I didn't know I had to have a contract. Your money will be taken away from you. So find a contract, find something with the dates, find something that shows on this date that you chose it, the day that you filed your form or the day before, something like that. All right, so now it's going to say, you said this was a contract. We're going to look through your whole bin for contracts. If I had a nickname, I could put it here. I do. I have a nickname that is called Fake. So I'm going to type that in there and click search. I have a couple of fake contracts. This is the one from today. So I'm going to select that fake contract and it will populate down below. And so notice my fake contract will tell me the service provider is already in, the 470 is already in, the award date is already in. I've got all kinds of wonderful little contract information here on my fake contract. I did already enter that the service start date, it does give you a place to change it, but the service start date is the beginning of the fiscal year. This says when is the date your contract expires. The contract will expire on the last day of the fiscal year, which is 6/30/2018. 19, sorry, it warned me.
If it expires at if it's a 5-year contract, you still have to just put in that.
Right, but the 5-year, I guess for basic maintenance, it could be a 5-year contract. But for most things in internal connections, it's 1 year. And I also realize if they review this application tomorrow and award it to you, and you find paperwork online somewhere that says you can purchase it as early as April 1st, you can. Please don't. And the reason why I say that is because there's a lot more paperwork to fill out, and you have to mark certain other boxes on the 486 to say I got it before the funding year started. It gets a little confusing. Please just purchase and pay for your equipment that you're purchasing in Category 2 in the fiscal year where you're supposed to be doing it. So do all of your filing of paperwork and billing, etc., after July 1st. It's going to, trust me, it's going to save you time and energy. In addition to that, if you were to find out way at the very end of the year in like March that you got funding for last year and it's like drawn out for some reason and there was an issue with your program, you can get an extension. If it's like installing wiring or something like that, you can get an extension of time. You do have to ask for that extension before the end of the year. So this way it gives you the entire 12 months to work with. If you need more time, please let me know and I will explain to you how to file that extension to get 6 more months or something like that. They almost always say yes if you ask for it before the deadline. So here we have a narrative and it says, what is it that you're applying for? So I'm going to say network upgrades for whole district. In our case, everything of our bid came from one provider. So we're going to put everything under one FRN. You might have a situation where you need to do one FRN for network upgrades with one provider and a little bit others with another, but I'm going to put it all under one. So you can see here, I have my FRN. I have no line items underneath. So I'm going to fix that. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Cancel. I know, right? You got to click on the number. All of you here, to keep me honest, click on the number, and now I'm going to do my line items, and I notice this changed to line items, and I'm going to say add a new FRN line item. See, I eat, breathe, and sleep E-Rate and still click the wrong button. Yes, imagine that. So here I am. I'm going to say what kind of service this is. I'm going to start with the top service of cabling and connectors and go through to show you all the various options. So the first service of cabling connectors, when I come down to type of product, my product choices are cabling and connectors. So those are the only 2 product lines in cabling and connectors. You can do it either way. We have a school district. Thank you, Brian, for the wonderful example who claimed cabling in multiple colors. So on his form, he clicked several line items for cabling, and he said, I want a line item, I want blue cabling, and I want green cabling, and I want red cabling, and I want purple cabling. And he did a line for each color cable, and he did a line for each color connector. And I made fun of him because it took him forever to fill out his form. And I said to him, why didn't you just go back to the provider and say, give me the total feet of cabling on a bill and say cabling and just do it once? And he said, because blue cabling costs more than red cabling or whatever. Like he knew the price differences, and the connectors for purple were 3 cents higher than the connectors. And like, I was like, okay, Mr. Detail. So he filled it out and had, his 5 colors of cable and his 5 colors of connectors. And I smiled at him, and it took him forever. Then I went to visit his district. It's beautiful. It's a rainbow wiring closet. He and his students that he hires in the summer went and rewired the entire building that summer with their colored cables. It's rainbow, and he knows, he's got like his blue for his wired network and his purple for his wireless and his red for his surveillance cameras and his voice over IP. Like he's got it all spelled out. And while I was standing in his office talking about how colorful it was, he got a phone call from the lab of the high school science lab. And the teacher said, we have a new tester thing in chemistry, and it plugs into the internet, and you told me just to plug it in and it would get an IP address and work, but it's not. And he literally wheeled over on his chair to the switch, and he said, oh, you have that plugged into blue, don't you? Plug that into red. She took it out and plugged it into red, and she said, okay, thanks, it's working now. And he said, now you know why I have a rainbow wire closet. So I've quit making fun of him, but I do talk about it as an example. So you can be as detailed here as you want, or not. You're not, Chris is not. So he did it, yes, a line item for every color. He's an overachiever. I would just get a bill from the provider that says X number of feet of cabling, and then I'd work on the colors on the side. USAC probably prefers you to do it the way he did it. That's a lot of work. Whatever you apply for, if you do it as each individual line item, your bill must match every individual line item. So if you did it in a group and said 1,000 feet of cable, the bill needs to say 1,000 feet of cable. So everything does need to match. They have been checking. They're calling them inline audits. So in billing, they have been asking for invoicing. They have been asking, show me that you paid your portion of the bill. They have been asking for the matching invoices.
I just got asked for check numbers.
You got asked for check numbers to pay it?
For a DSL line.
Wow, that's interesting. The next, for $40. Woo. The next one is caching. So caching servers are eligible, and we had a conversation before we started the presentation today. So you do have an option of caching equipment or caching service, so you can apply for that. Do not think that you are going to confuse them and put in for a file server and they won't know the difference. They will. You will get questions on it if you try to slide through a file server. File servers are not eligible. Caching servers are, if you are interested in getting that. Next option is data distribution. This is where you'll find your routers and your switches. So this is a wired data distribution. Please note that if you apply for a router and you get the make and model number here that you need, and by the time you get ready to buy it, 6 months from now, there's a new one out, you are okay to go from the 2500 to the 2501 if you choose to do that. If there is a difference in the cost, that's on you. You have to pick up the difference. If you do the other model and change models, you do have to file a form to USAC to say, I have a service substitution request. I want the 2501 instead of the 2500. So you do have to fill out forms to switch, but you can do that. Next is data protection. And I have gotten a lot of emails about this. Yes, UPS battery backup is eligible. Yes, firewall service and components are eligible. Please note, if you are applying for a firewall, the filtering is not eligible. Please break it out, and I will do it as an example for you in a minute to show how much of it is filtering so that you don't have questions from USAC on that. If you do not break it out and be proactive with it, they will have a tendency to say, oh, that sounds like a filtering element, and just deny it. So please do note that. Same thing with the UPS battery backup, and the next one that we'll see that's racks. If you are asked what is plugged into that backup, or what is on that rack, your answer is network equipment. Routers and switches. If there's anything else plugged into that backup or anything else on that rack, they will ask you what percentage does that piece of equipment take up, and they will remove that funding from you. You charge your iPhone with the backup. Racks are the same situation. Notice it does say racks and cabinets. Please note, racks is a creative term. So we have a school district who put in a classroom outdoors, an outdoor classroom space. The pole counted as a rack. So they did a pole and they mounted a wireless point-to-point that then connected to the school district to get it out to their outdoor learning space, and the pole was acceptable as a rack. They did get a question about it. They explained why they rationalized it. The guy on the phone said, "Oh, I get it. It was approved." So please know that that is a loose term. Software is here. It is operating system of eligible equipment. They have been very specific about it. You may not pay for Microsoft Server software. With this program, it is the eligible equipment only. This means you can I would file your firewall service and subscription under basic maintenance for the firewall. But there are some other software packages. Maybe this would be your software for your LAN controller. I would put that under LAN controller. So, but it is an option. If you don't exactly know where it goes, software is an option for you. The big one that most people are applying for is wireless data distribution. And this is where you'll find your access points, antennas, LAN controllers, and wireless controllers. If you have access points that require a wireless controller, please note, most wireless controllers come with licensing for only like 5 units or something, and you're buying 20. You will need to have in your bid the additional 15 licenses. That would be software. Or you could put it down wireless controller, I think it would go through. But please know, if you have a software piece for each device for it to maintain it, you need to apply for that too. We have a handful of districts who purchased, not knowing, access points and the wireless controller, but didn't realize they needed those other CALs, and they had to pay that out of district funds.
And that
So
all would go under internal connection,
internal connection, wireless data distribution.
not under any means.
Right. Now, if you have an annual fee that is like 5 years and you're going to pay for it after the fact, you could put that under basic maintenance, I guess, because that would be a licensing fee. I was thinking of the CALs to make it all talk to each other, not necessarily the annual maintenance fee. I think it could go either place. How do you define it?
So that's one of the things I want to do this year with my internal connections, is just renew the licensing for
Right.
the next period of time.
I guess my feeling on it is if it's just licensing, I'd do it as basic maintenance. If you're buying it all new, I would put it under internal connections and include the licensing. Do you see what I'm saying? But I think it could work either place.
So on a 470, should you list it as both to be safe?
Yes. Yes. If you were on the 470, you should list it as both just to be safe. Yeah, because basic maintenance is a separate thing. And Hudsonville did not apply for basic maintenance, so I can't give you a basic maintenance example. It will give me an error when I try to apply for it because that was not on the 470. So it's smart enough to know that it wasn't there. What? Oh, okay. So let me just go through the last couple of things. So that was wireless. And then there is a miscellaneous. And miscellaneous has installation, activation, and initial configuration. Though I feel like that goes on each item. If it's broken out, you can do it. So if your bid says you got a router and 6 switches and a firewall, right? And then it has a separate line for installation and activation, you can file it alone here. Most of us, these are the equipment and it comes with the installation, and you would just check the box for that. I've not seen anyone apply for training. I think that's interesting. I kind of like the concept. I don't know what kind of questions would be asked, but I think training on my firewall would be really nice to have because I hate my firewall. But training is interesting. Fees, taxes, etc. Most of the time that's bundled into the amount and you're tax exempt, so you don't see taxes. So I don't know where that comes into play. Somebody said yesterday that they were going to file for fees, taxes, etc. for the shipping. And I said, before you do that, I think I would call the provider and say, could you please waive the shipping because it's going to cause me all kinds of heartache with E-rate, and maybe they would get the shipping free. Just a thought. But they were going to put the shipping under there. So those are your options. So now I'm going to go back up here to the top for our example. And I am going to go with the wireless data distribution. And I am going to pick a access point. Then right here it says, is installation included in the price? So if you are paying your company and they're coming to put it in and it's not broken out, but they're going to install everything for you, you can say yes. If it is broken out in a subset, you'll have to do miscellaneous and then installation. If they're not installing it at all and you're the geeky person who can plug in and do all of your network, you can say no. In this case, I'm going to say yes. Wait, who was my provider? I think it was CDWG. I'm going to say no because they're not going to come down and do it. And then I would pick the brand name. So in their case, they use Ubiquiti. And it is 5402I or something. I don't know. There was a letter in it. Under lease or non-purchase agreement, it is not a lease. I'm buying it outright. So the answer is no. And then I'm going to say continue. Now it's going to say how much is that unit costing you. So for my $471 for Cat 2, my costs are always going to be one time over here on the side, not the monthly. So I have to put 0 in my monthly for it to calculate appropriately. And then over here on the one-time costs, I am going to say $250. I'm totally making it up, so nobody yell at me and tell me that it was too much or too little. And I am going to get 10 of those. So that's my one-time quantity. There is a little pull down here in the middle that will get confused unless you say each. Notice my other options are dozen, foot, 100 feet, hours. So it gives you several other options. So now I have 10 at $250 a piece. That's going to round out my wireless needs. And I'm going to say save and continue. Now it wants to know, are the costs equally shared among all the entities? Well, no, they're not actually. Out of these 10, 2 of them are going to the high school, but the rest are going in the grade school. So I'm going to say no, they are not equally shared. And then when I say save and continue on the next page, it's going to say how much for each. So I have to check the boxes in front and edit my eligible cost. And I know my total cost is $2,500. So 2 of them are going in the grade school. So I said they were $250 a piece, so that's $500 of my total, which means the remaining $2,000 will come out. Oops, that's backwards. $2,000 will go in the grade school, $500 in the high school. The thing that I like about this money and being able to break it out in this way this year is that it used to not give me the option of changing the totals and making the totals match up to the budget that I have available. It used to just say, do you want to divide this in half or do you want to divide it by student count if it was sharing? So now I have the ability to change these numbers and manipulate them how I see fit. Please note that if you say you are buying it with grade school money, it is supposed to be in the grade school. So if you've gotten a little off the realm with your, off the rails, I'll say, with your application, if that's a little weird and you have no money left in your high school, but you need equipment for your high school, you really should be putting this equipment in your high school and then taking old high school equipment and putting it in the grade school. You really, or file a Form 500 and straighten out your funding before you ask for it. They could come check one day and make sure that that is there in where you said it was going to be. I'm going to now add another line item for the wireless data distribution and choose a wireless controller. So they do offer Ubiquitous does offer a built-in free wireless controller, but they also now have a paid unit that I would rather have the upgrade. So I'm going to say Ubiquiti. I'm making it up. No installation, and no, it is not a lease. It's thinking. And say continue. So again, 0 for my monthly costs. One-time cost of $500. Ineligible is 0. One-time quantity is 1. So I only need one of these controllers to manage my network. And I do have to say each. Again, save and continue. However, this wireless controller will be used equally among my grade school and high school. It's managing all of my network entities. So I say, yes, they are shared equally. Save and continue. And the next page should automatically do the math for me. And it did split it equally, $250 per building. So it's managing my whole network for both buildings. I can do it equally that way. So those are your two options. You can say no and configure the funds yourself, or yes, and it will do the math. It does do it equally. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in my firewall. So under internal connections, I'm going to call that data protection. And I'm using the firewall example for a reason. So here's my firewall services. I am going to say this is a SonicWall firewall. And it is a model 4700. I'm installing it myself and configuring it. So I'm going to say continue. And again, my monthly cost is 0. Well, actually, let's see if we could put it both together here. Now that would be licensing. The firewall itself is 0. And the one-time cost for my whole firewall is $2,300. However, my documentation says that $800 of this $2,300 is my filtering. And filtering is not eligible, so I will need to put down the $800 here, and it will do the math for me and tell me what is eligible is $1,500. Please do not do the math yourself and just put the $1,500 in the top. Fill the math out here so that the reviewers can see that you are recognizing that there is a portion that is ineligible and you've quoted it. They will ask you for that documentation to prove that the $800 is something you got from the provider and that you didn't just make it up off the top of your head. There are some providers that I have seen quoting that the entire device is eligible, but that the software annually that you pay is broken down and some of it is ineligible. If you have documentation to show that, great. You may file for the whole device, provide it when asked for it. Most of them show an ineligible part of the unit and an ineligible part of the software. So again, with my firewall, I only need one of those for my district. And it is each over here on the left. So I'm almost out of money. It's saying, are these shared equally? I'm going to say yes again and divide that up equally. And continue. So now I have the firewall services and components, the wireless controllers, and my wireless access points. I am about out of money, so I'm going to say I am done with those line items. So I have 1, 2, 3 here. I'm finished with that, and I'm going to say continue. And then I'm going to add another FRN because in reality, I'm really busy and I don't have time to install all of this stuff. Yes, what's your question?
When it splits it between the two schools and you receive the money, does that money have to go to some funding for the two schools?
Okay, so that's a good question. So the question is if you split it between the two schools and then you do a bear form at the end and get the money back, do you have to divide that up among schools? No. this means you're paying your whole bill, you're dividing it up by the schools. The equipment needs to be in the appropriate schools, but the money coming back to your district can be spent anywhere. You could buy football uniforms with it. I would not recommend that. I would put it back into a technology budget of some sort, but once it's already spent by your district. This is actually really nice for our alternative schools because the money is spent out of the appropriate lines out of the grant, but when the money comes back, it goes into your special projects fund, basically.
See, we were told by our auditor when we were on,
Oh, well, if your auditor told you something different, do what he or she said.
whatever fund you take that out of, that money has to go exactly back into that fund.
Really? So in your case, if that's the case and your auditor has said whatever you take that out of has to go directly back into it, and I get it because I run a grant, I would get the discounts on my bills. I mean, if at all possible, I would get the discounts on my bills so I only pay my portion out of the grant and I don't have to have that money coming back, especially if it's going to be weird ending of fiscal years and things, because federal grants sometimes don't end on June 30th, and so that throws it into the mix. I would definitely see if I could get the discounts. Speaking of that, some providers, once you get your funding and you file your 486, some providers will say, no, I need you to pay all of it, and then you can file for reimbursement. Other providers will say, just give me your portion, and I will file USAC for the remainder. So you can deal with different providers. I know some of them go both ways. Some of the smaller ones will say, I can't afford, like the local places, I can't afford to pick up all the cost and then wait for you to get reimbursement or whatever. Just, I can't pick up that cost. So you pay all of it and file for it back. So do communicate with your provider. But if at all possible, I would get discounts on my bills if that's the case with grants, because that could get in and out of a grant would get really confusing. The funding request here is installation of equipment. This is a different provider. It is not a continuation, so I'm not copying anything over from last year. It is internal connections. Continue. It's thinking. It is a contract because I'm going to pay Charlie Incorporated to put all of this in for me. I'm going to do a search and I'm going to pick my I Love E-Rate contract. It's on my last page. And so I'm going to pay Charlie Incorporated to install for me. Again, the service start date is the beginning of the year. The service end date is 6/30/2018. 19. I do that every time. Whoops. I did that. I'm so glad. You did that? You accidentally chose basic maintenance?
So I checked and I feel like I did that. So I just refiled.
Yeah. So this is installation of equipment. So now I have my installation of equipment. I do have to add the line item details and say how much that's going to cost me. I'm going to do a new line item, and this time I'm going to choose miscellaneous. And under miscellaneous, I'm going to say installation, activation, and configuration. This is a special case. It does ask me for my model numbers, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and say Ubiquitous because that was most of it. I can't pick two. So I'm going to pick Ubiquity, and I'm going to say 4,700 because that was my most expensive thing. It is not a lease, and installation is, I guess, included in the price because it is installation. Those answers pop up either way. And this is a special circumstance. So I do have a E-Rate vendor, Charlie Incorporated, who's going to install it all for me, but I bought all of my stuff from CDWG. So I had two different contracts here. I bought it all from one place, but I'm having the local guy install it. So the monthly recurring cost is 0. The ineligible costs are 0, and the monthly quantity is 0. Over here, I am going to say it is $60. The ineligible cost is 0, and I'm paying for 100 hours. 100 hours is what he tells me it will take to put all that in. Okay, I know that's an exaggeration, just roll with it. So it's going to be $6,000 to Charlie Incorporated to put that in. You want to come work for me? And again, I could say that this is shared equally, but it's not because more of those wireless access points are going into my grade school than my high school. So I am going to say, honestly, in my grade school, that's $6,000. I'm going to say I'm going to take $5,000 out of the grade school. Whoops, edit eligible cost. Come on. $5,000 out of the grade school, $1,000 out of the high school. And confirm, continue. And I am done with that one. So, does anybody want to see an example of anything else? How about the licensing for firewall? So, it's not probably going to let me do basic maintenance because I don't think that was on our 470, but let's try.
Can I ask a question really quick about
Sure.
that? So if you do the 5,000 and the 1,000, but it's all on one bill later, like when you're showing your payment,
Yeah.
do you have to have it itemized on the bill to show?
Okay, so let me repeat that. So, if you have it, you're putting in your firewall, but you also have the installation, it's all in one bill?
Well, any installation.
Okay.
Let's say the access points, you're splitting
Okay.
at 60/40. Do you have to have it separated on the bill, or can it just be?
Oh, by building? Okay, so no, you don't have to have it separated on the bill by building. You just have to make sure that if you said you got 7, that the bill says you got 7. Do you see what I'm saying? It doesn't matter that 2 were in the high school and 5 were in the grade school.
So the installation.
The installation,
It's okay.
yeah, as long as the installation totals the $6,000, you'll be all right. You don't have to have it be like 5 for the grade school and 1 for the high school. That's a great question, though. Some people might go that far, but I think that's a step too, an unnecessary step. This is not a continuation, so I'm not copying anything over. And on this particular one, I'm going to try basic maintenance. We'll see if it works. Oh, it did work. Okay, so I'm going to say this is a basic maintenance contract because it's a bid. And the basic maintenance is going to be for my firewall. Again, I need to check my 470 and make sure it was there. And the basic maintenance is going to be looking up my contract. This is, I think, where it kicked me out yesterday. So, let's try fake contract and see. No, that's the one that didn't work yesterday. Hold on. I think it all ties back to the 470 that's listed. So we'll see. So here's the 470 from this year when I say, see, I cannot do this because you did not have basic maintenance on your 470. So it's literally looking at this 470 number and saying, I can't file that. If you did have basic maintenance on your 470, then you could go through the steps and say basic maintenance. I will tell you right now, you can try to get through with a 5-year, like prepay or whatever. They're probably not going to let you, but you can attempt. They really want you to pay it every year. But on this instance, had it worked on the next page, I would say basic maintenance for the licensing of the firewall is this much, and again, do the ineligible component and add that in.
What if it's a 5-year license that they pay for all in this year?
I'm trying to figure out the nice way to say this. If it is a 5-year license that you are paying for all this year, and it does not say 5-year license, but it just says license, and that's an understood agreement between you and the party giving you the license, okay. If it says 5-year on the bill, there's a high likelihood that PIA will say to you, we're only funding 1/5 of this because this is 1 year. Are you following me? So if it's not stated as a 5-year license, but just a license, okay. But if it says 5 years on it, they will probably make you break it out by 1/5 a year, which requires you to file a basic maintenance every year and a 471, which I find annoying, but that's the way that it rolled last year. I could be wrong. They could be handling it different this year because that was annoying and a lot more paperwork for everyone.
It also required the company to say you can split it up into 5 years.
Yes. And some companies will do the 5 years, splitting it up, and others wouldn't. And for most circumstances, most people said, got frustrated and said, forget it, then I won't turn it into E-rate, deny me, is what happened. And I hate to see that happen, but that's how it was handled last year.
I mean, you save everybody a ton of money if you do a 5-year license on
Yeah.
something like a wireless controller. You're
Yeah,
gonna keep it for that long for sure anyway.
yeah. I agree with you. You could try to fight with them, apply for the 5-year and see and try to fight with them. If you could just take out the words 5-year in your bid and in your invoice, you would be okay. So, I mean, it's a good try. I agree with you on it. Yeah. And honestly, a year ago, had you asked me that, I would have said, yeah, absolutely put in the 5-year. It's just in that PIA review process, we saw a lot of questions on it and people getting frustrated. So there was one vendor, and I don't know how they worded it different than the others, but 2 big vendors that I had talked to about it, and one of them almost always went through just fine, and the other one got called out on it every time. So I don't know what the difference really was in the way that they created their bids, but again, this is continue to certification, and when I continue this to certification, it then brings in my connectivity information. So this is the stuff we filled out from the beginning. It sucks that all in for me. And then when I click Review Form 471, now I get the pop-up again. So that's nice. It tells me we're going to make your PDF, get a few minutes, go have a coffee, come back in a minute. While you're out at it, create a whistleblower case. Now, I think that's interesting that it comes up on this page. Right there. Turn in people who are doing things wrong. I will tell you, back from the landing page, that if you have any questions, if you need to change spin numbers, if you find that you turn all of this in here before the deadline, and then lo and behold, at your April board meeting, somebody says, oh, we have too many kids in this particular building next year now that we're looking at our totals, and we're kicking the 3rd grade out and we're moving them to the next building, because that always seems to happen in April or May. If you find that that's the case and your changes are, now you have changes for your student counts, you can go back at that point, put in a customer service case and say, what do you want me to fill out in order to make my changes? Because that happens every year. Or lo and behold, your April board meeting, they say, we're getting rid of this grade school, and all those kids are coming to West Side instead of East Side. We're condemning East Side. They have black mold. You can do that. The other thing is, if they are really good about the contact us, if you get a question and you reply and you have said, please let me know that you got this, and they don't, and then you say again, please let me know that you got this, and they don't, you can do a customer support. Anytime you do a contact us customer support, I feel like it moves a little faster. Just saying. The other thing is, my understanding is that PIA review is done in-house in USAC, but Bearform review, the 472 review, is an external company. And so you get a little discrepancy where the external company says they can't see what USAC can see or whatever. Also, they are not very good about replying back. The external company is the one that says, I need this from you, and you give it to them, and then you say, did you get it? Just checking in to make sure you got it. Like, they're not very good about replying back. We have reported that as state coordinators, and Catriona was all over that. And I think that those problems will be rectified. They were having a meeting, happened to be, we met with them in the morning, and they were having a meeting with that company in the afternoon. So I think that those are going to be streamlined and figured out, but they have been Johnny on the spot with review this year. So again, reports and landing page. Finally, here's my task. So down here in my task, here's my review. Just like the other one, I would download the form and review it, make sure it looks correct. Then I would check this box. Somebody asked over the break the difference between send for certification and continue to certification. Send is to someone else in your district. If you have anywhere in your form something that says save and share is sending it to someone else in your district. You're going to continue to certification, and again, all of the boxes are checked, and the 2 pull downs are no. Please do make a note that this right here is how much the district will be paying, so it does have the applicant share spelled out for you. And all of these other boxes basically say, I will keep stuff for 28 days, or I will not do bids until 28 days. I will keep stuff for 10 years. I will follow all the laws. I am not a criminal. And if anybody wins the lottery, they will no longer be on free and reduced lunch. And I realize that will change things. So you're going to click certify there. I am not, because I do not certify on behalf of Hudsonville. It's just my example. Any overall questions about the 471 Cat 2? Yes.
My boss told me that at a meeting where he heard great things about you, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
They learned a lot. That you.
But my boss said great things about you, but keep going.
Can't imagine what he meant, but anyway, no. He said that to get Cat 2, he was told you had to at least be in spending a certain amount of money.
Okay, not necessarily true. However, I can see why that would be the impression that he got. So to get Cat 2, you have to have students, which you do. And if you have less than, I believe if I do the math, it is 61 students, then there is a set amount of money that you get. So if you do the 153.47 times 61, you're going to get 9,432, I think it is. That's a minimum amount. If you have less than those 60 students, you get that minimum amount. So you could have 20 students in your program and still get that 9,000. Everything else, if you have more than the 62 students, it is another 153.47 each student, right? You are not required to spend any of that money. It could sit there and you could never buy it. You do not have to spend all of that 9,000, but you don't get more than that 9,000 if you have less than 60 students. So in your program, if you have 20, you have that $9,000 to spend, but you can't spend $12,000. That's the $9,000 amount. And you still have to pay your 15% because you're a 90% district. So 15, it's 85% on category 2. It's like every time they throw another rule in there, it gets confusing. But out of the, say it's 10,000. Let's just pretend you have 65 students. It totals 10,000 exactly. What?
It's limited.
Yeah. So if you have a $10,000 budget at that building and you're an 80% district, you still have to cover 2,000. USAC, it's like a matching grant. USAC will cover the 8. But you don't have to spend all of it. There are many, many large school districts in the state that have $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 budgets available to them that they're not touching. Like they're using maybe a quarter of it because they just can't afford their own part of the cost, and that's totally understandable. We do have a whole bunch of districts, when we go back to that Compare and Connect site, a whole bunch of districts with red lights that say you have not spent any of your funding. And that is our, Education Superhighway's way of saying, hey, there is money here. If you know about it and you're choosing not to take it, so be it. But there is money here available to you. And it's kind of like a coupon matching deal to me. Like if you're an 80% district, if you can get somebody to sign on the dotted line for that 20, you can pick up that 80% matching. Even if they'll give you, 20 grand, but you really, to take care of all of it, you need 100, that's never going to happen. If it's less than a salary of a person, you might get the board to commit to it, maybe. But definitely not if it's more than a salary of a person in most cases. So I can understand why he thought that. There has been some miscommunication about how people were under the impression that the budget was the budget and they could spend all of the $9,000. They didn't have to spend their own money. So that's part of a conversation too. But you do have to spend your portion, and you can spend up to that, but not more. So you can't turn in a bill for 20 grand and say, pay all of it. They're going to be like, nope, we're only going to give you the 9. The other thing that I hope doesn't happen moving forward, but I'm just warning you, please do check the Category 2 budget tool on the USAC site. They have updated it with the money that was spent last year. So you can see how much money you have left. It is being reported that those who went through PIA review for Category 2 this year, if they were over budget in a building, they just got denied. We have reported that we would really like our PIA reviewers to say, hold up, wait a second, you're over budget. What would you like to take out of your bid? That would be the appropriate way to handle it, especially though they're not wavering. You can't say, oh, just take the rest out of the high school or great, that's understandable. I get it because it's supposed to be building to building. But please do know you should be able to line item something out and still get the rest of that paid for. Inflation prices have not been set yet, so we are still at the 153.47. There are wagers, state, national wagers, if you want to get in on the bids, for what that will be with inflation. We're all hoping and shooting for 155. But inflation will kick in, and you may find in 2 weeks you go, oh, look, I have $2 more per student. You don't know. We don't know when that will happen or if it will happen, but we're hoping for it. Please stay tuned for more offerings from the LTC. We are working, Tim is out talking to all kinds of ROEs and working with them extensively to get some technical training for our IT people, as well as training for our teaching coaches, integration specialists out this spring. So we are working on some offerings, co-sponsoring with ROEs, so that will be great. If you would like to join our team, please let us know. We have several job applications open. ISB has a job application open. ICE has a job application open, so there are a lot of technical jobs that are looking to be filled here this spring as well. And please see us at the ICE and ISTE conferences. So if you are interested in attending, ICE's conference is in February in Schaumburg, and the ISTE conference is the national conference this June in Chicago. So those will both be fun events to attend. Hope to see a bunch of you there. Also, I heard gossip that the ICE chapter is going in with some other people to co-sponsor an event at ISTE, and they're renting out the Science and Industry Museum. Gossip has it that will be cool. That's true. True stuff. True gossip. If you want the copy of this presentation today, this is it. Somebody asked for that earlier. I should probably put that on the first screen too, so you guys could write it down, but it is just a Google shortcut, Q, capital V3, capital V, little CZ. That will take you to the presentation, and you can follow all the links from here. One helpful link from here is that Seamless Schools eligibility link. It is a little hard to find on the ISB website, so you can follow the direct link here. Call me if you want the step-by-step, and I'll tell you what to click to get to it. It's a little bit buried. This is my email address and our website. Please do stay in touch. Let me know if you have any issues. That is why I'm here. We will be doing a last chance workshop on the 21st. If for some reason you did not click submit today and you need hands-on help, we'll be at Joliet on the 21st. There are also workshops in Peoria and Champaign and Northwestern Illinois and LaSalle and all of that, Kane County, etc., going on. I am done with you today. I will walk around and answer questions if anybody needs to fill some stuff out. Make sure that you get submitted what you need submitted, and feel free to reach out to me. Thanks.